Deck the trowels with boughs of holly.
Get yourself ready to go down in history with a festive archaeological quiz here on the Time Team podcast.
Yes. Welcome to this Christmas edition of the Time Team podcast with a bit of a difference this episode. I'm Dr. Helen Geake and that's Martyn Williams, who's going to be our master of ceremonies over the next little while.
Yes, indeed. We are about to embark on what I hope is the first of many Time Team Christmas quizzes. And to join us for this episode, here he is, your challenger, Helen. Derek Pitman is here. Hi, Derek.
Hello. I'm a bit nervous being introduced as a challenger because Helen is much smarter than me.
Oh, but yes.
Hey, look, anything could happen in the quiz. Anything could happen. And no one does themselves down as dunces before we get going. That's what I'm going to say, because both of you could wipe the floor with me.
Martyn, to be honest, that's not saying an awful lot, though, is it? Not in terms of archaeology. I mean, This is not a quiz. This is not a quiz about podcasting, radio, sound, communication, a lovely voice, and all the other wonderful things you have, Martyn. It's a quiz about archaeology, which, as we have occasionally discussed, includes all human life. So I'm a bit nervous about what's been included.
Well, that is all to come. Derek, by the way, here we are, 24th of December. How's 2024 been for you?
Oh, it's been a cracking year. I've had lots of big life events this year. I got a promotion to head of department, which was a blessing and a curse, it's fair to say. But I must admit, as has been the case for the last few years, the highlights of the year have been the various time teams we've done, be it the big 3-day digs, the amazing time I had out with Helen at Sutton Hoo, or indeed some of the smaller expedition crew things we've done on the side. So I've had a really good archaeological year, lots of good highlights.
Yeah, and there's so much to look forward to as well in 2025. More on that a little bit later, but it's time to get down to business. Just before we get onto the quiz, we've talked, I've got a little surprise for the two of you now. We've talked on this podcast before about the idea of Helen narrating audiobooks, which I'm sure, Derek, you'll agree would be an amazing idea because she's got the voice for it, hasn't she?
Exactly, yeah. I would listen to Helen reading any book any day.
Well, I thought with it being Christmas, we could put together our own version of a popular Christmas yarn. Are you two ready to give this a go, right? Because I'm sending this to you now.
Oh my goodness, right, okay. Off we go then.
I have written "Twas the night before Time Team."
Twas the night before digging, and all through the field not a trench had been opened, no secrets revealed. The finds trays were stacked by the sight hut with care, in hopes that great treasures soon would be there.
Diggers were nestled all snug in their tents, dreaming of coins, pits and Roman events. With me in my high-vis and hat on my head, I'd just finished marking where trenches were spread.
And leading the charge with his quick comic wit was Sir Tony Robinson, ready to sit. He marshalled the team with a voice full of cheer, and I knew in a moment our 3-day deadline was near.
Now Mick, grab your maps. Now Carenza, the plans. On Stuart, the contours. Lawrence, fetch the scans. So into the trenches, Time Team they all flew, with notebooks and sieves, and geophys data too.
Jackie was pondering a find on her tray, while Carenza debated where the skeletons lay. Gusted with Naomi, both measuring ditches, and Lawrence sketched features with astonishing riches.
Stuart was mapping the land all around, reading the hills and the dips in the ground. Derek filmed Digwatch to bring us the latest. The Sutton Hoo mounds are surely the greatest.
A helmet, a brooch, a fine medieval tile. Each find brought a cheer and a Time Team smile. And as they packed up, the cameras in tow, Tony turned to the team with a smile that glowed.
He sprang to his rover and gave a loud call. On to the next site, there's time for us all. but I heard him exclaim as he drove out of sight, "Happy digging to all, and to all a good night."
Hey! That was really good fun, wasn't it? Oh.
Well done. That's brilliant. Yes.
I can't believe we pulled that off.
Yeah, that was pretty good. And I think we've scratched an itch there, haven't we? That was excellent.
I expect it'll come back again, though. More poetry.
I think so. Right then, let's get on to the quiz here on the Time Team podcast. And here is how it's going to work. I've had questions that have been submitted by members of Time Team. Now, this could be archaeologists who work for Time Team. It could be the crew behind the scenes. So it could be the questions that you get about archaeology, but you could also get a question about, I don't know, an archaeological technique, or it could be about Time Team itself. 8 questions in total. Now, I'm going to need you, I think, to make it fair here, I'm going to need you to both write your answers down before revealing it, and that way we can make sure there's no cheating. If you're ready to go, Derek and Helen, are you ready for the Time Team quiz?
Yes.
Just finding a biro. Hold on a sec. Okay, off you go.
Okay then, here we go for the Time Team quiz. And the first question comes from our friend Stuart Ainsworth. Right, go ahead, Stuart. What's your question, please?
If I went out for a walk and came back all excited and said I'd found some lumps and bumps that indicated I'd found an enclosure with a clavicular entrance, what do you think I might have discovered?
Okay. Some lumps and bumps, an enclosure, a clavicular entrance. What might Stuart have discovered? Helen, I think we'll come to you first on this one, please. And we'll take it in turns to go first. Write your answers down. Helen, what have you got?
Well, I'm thinking that clavicular is something to do with a clavicle, a collarbone. So I'm thinking about a human collarbone, which is a kind of S shape, and I'm wondering whether it's a kind of S-shaped entrance, a long, like a medieval barbican, but with a kink to it.
Okay, but an entrance to what?
Oh, an entrance to what? Well, I thought we said an enclosure. Do I have to identify the enclosure?
Well, I mean, if you could.
Well, I have seen hill forts with entrances like that, so that you get your enemy kind of bent round to controlled in a bend, so that you can pick them off with bows and arrows, maybe. So I'm going to go for hill fort.
Okay. Any particular sort of hill fort?
Oh gosh,
That's very specific, Martyn.
It is.
a West Country one.
Okay. You gone for a location? I was looking for more a time period, but
Iron Age hill fort, because that's when hill forts are. Do I have to go for Middle Iron Age or Late Iron Age or something?
No, we'll say Iron Age hill fort. Okay. So Helen's saying an Iron Age hill fort. Derek, what are you saying?
Well, before I give my answer, I'm just going to say it's nice to learn a new word. So I'm going to try.
And what a lovely word it is as well.
I know,
Clavicular.
right?
It's very nice to say.
I feel like Helen's probably got this one, but I put banjo enclosure.
And can you explain what that is?
It's an enclosure shaped like a banjo, but I wasn't sure what a
Clavicular.
that kind of entrance actually looked like. So
And I'm going to need a time period from you as well, please, Derek.
It would be Iron Age banjo enclosure.
So you're both saying some sort of Iron Age enclosure.
Yes, but now I've thought if we're going to bring in musical instruments, there's a thing called a clavichord. Oh. Anyway, we shall see.
Let's find out. Stuart, the answer, please.
And the answer is a Roman temporary camp, sometimes called a marching camp. These were constructed by the army on a campaign and were meant only to defend the troops for a very short period, perhaps even just one night. A clavicular is a very specific type of entrance and is a diagnostic feature for this type of encampment. See if you can find out why we use the term clavicular to describe the entrance.
Ooh. Well, I think we're maybe closer to working out why we use the term clavicular because of the shape. And you both identified that there's a certain shape that goes with a clavicular entrance. But what we didn't manage to identify that Stuart has informed us is that the shape would lead us to understand that it was a Roman fort of some description.
Yeah, I wonder whether we might have been... we should have thought a bit more about what language clavicula is derived from. It's a very classical word, isn't it, from Latin?
He's definitely beaten us there, Stuart.
Afraid so. But then what would you expect of Stuart? I mean, he was definitely always going to beat us.
Yeah, he really has. Okay, so here we go then with question number 2. And this has come in from a fairly new member of Time Team. It comes in from Meg. Go ahead, Meg.
Hello, Martyn, Helen and Derek. It's Meg here. My question is, which hominin specimen is celebrating their 100th birthday since being discovered in 1924 in a quarry in South Africa?
100th birthday of a hominin specimen. Get thinking, write it down, and we'll come to Derek.
Now, I could fall flat on my face here because I'm going to say this one's easy, but that's only because I got a news roundup from the university this morning and one of my colleagues had been asked to comment on the anniversary of Lucy.
Okay, and who is Lucy, please?
So Lucy, oh gosh, you're pushing me here, is, I believe, a Australopithecine, which I could be very wrong there, which is an early human ancestor. The one thing I know about Lucy is we have a replica of Lucy's skeleton in our lab, and she's very short.
Oh, okay. Helen, your go.
Yes, Lucy she's about 4 foot tall or something, isn't she? Or less than that. But I didn't write down Lucy. Oh dear, because you said South Africa and I thought that Lucy was one of the leaky ones from Kenya. So I wrote down I find it really difficult to say, Australopithecus afarensis, because I thought that was one of the South African species. But I didn't have a name, so Derek beats me there.
Well, let's find out if he does, because here is Meg with the answer.
He may not.
The answer is tongue child. If you said Australopithecus africanus, then Martyn may give you half a point, I don't know. Discovered by Raymond Dart and local quarryman, tongue child is believed to have lived around 2.8 million years ago and aged at around 3 years old based on the start of eruption of their first molars. Merry Christmas to the whole Time Team family, and come on, Helen, I'm rooting for you to win.
Curses.
Oh.
Curses. I came in too confident.
Absolutely.
You did. You came in very hard on Lucy, didn't you? But not the case. No, so I think then, Helen, that gives you, as per Meg's suggestion, half a point.
Well, she said Africanus, I said
She did.
afarensis.
No,
so I
she
think
did.
you might need to Google those and find out if they're alternative names for the same thing or they're completely different. So hold your horses before you give me that half a point.
Yeah, I just feel like maybe I should give you half a point just to get some scores on the board.
A sympathy point.
That's true. Yes.
So we'll Google what you said in a moment, but I am going to give you, I think, half a point because I'm the one deciding who gets points here, and I think you were the closest, Helen, so I am going to give it to you. Thank you, Meg, for that question. Raises quite an interesting point because Meg was talking about using the dental records to age the skeleton. I didn't realise you could do that. That's such... I mean, it seems obvious when you say it, but it's just one of the many tools available to us to age a skeleton is using dental records.
Yeah, having said, how short Lucy is, people often wonder whether that's because she's a child, but of course height is a hugely variable thing, whereas when teeth erupt, that's much more of a consistent developmental thing that happens in all hominin species at roughly the same kind of time, and in fact probably in all mammals. I mean, dogs and cats also have milk teeth that drop out, don't they? Yeah,
I suppose so. And I guess what wisdom teeth as well would suggest that somebody was in their late 20s, early 30s, something like that, or or beyond. So there must be, it's fascinating stuff. All right, time to go in for question 3. Scores on the doors at the moment. Derek doesn't have anything, and Helen has a sort of question mark over half a point. And we're on question 3 now, 8 in total. And this one comes from somebody who you've already heard from on the podcast before, quite recently. Go ahead, Keith.
Hello, I'm Keith Westcott, Time Team's Detecting Team Manager. And my question is, as detectorists, what are the earliest metal artefacts that we might discover that connect us back to the origins of Father Christmas?
Oh, I like this question because it's festive themed. So as detectorists, what are the earliest metal objects we might discover that connect us back to the origins of Father Christmas? Write your answer down, and Helen will come to you first.
Okay, so earliest metal objects. At first I thought we were going to go back into the Bronze Age, but then Keith said that links us to Father Christmas. And I was thinking, oh gosh, jolly man in red coat, and then thinking more maybe laterally, Santa Claus is St. Nicholas, isn't he? The Claus, the Klaus, comes from Nicholas. Mm-hmm. So could these be something to do with St. Nicholas? And I did once record a pilgrim badge of St. Nicholas, which showed him in bishop's robes with 3 boys in a brine tub. And I think that is the story that gives rise to the idea that St. Nicholas brings presents, because the heads of the 3 boys in the brine tub, it's very complicated and would take probably a whole podcast to tell you all about, but it's linked to the idea that he brings bags of presents for children. So is it a pilgrim badge of St. Nicholas?
Derek, what have you got?
Oh, you went down a much more academic route than me, Helen, there. I got lost in toys, and then I thought, actually, no, toys would most likely be wood to begin with, I think. So maybe we need to look for some proxies for Father Christmas that may be metal. And I started to think about, what about the metal fittings on the harnesses for the reindeer, or even the metal treads for the sleigh itself? Because he's got to get around, hasn't he?
All right, those are the suggestions. So let's find out the answer. Keith, when you're ready, please.
Well, one of the earliest metal artefacts we know of would be a medieval pilgrim badge. These badges, dating back to the 12th century, were often associated with St. Nicholas and were worn by pilgrims visiting sites celebrated for his legendary generosity. So finding such a badge would be a tangible connection directly to the traditions that evolved into our modern Christmas celebrations. Wishing you all a joyful Yuletide from me and the detecting team.
Oh, thank you, Keith. And I think that is a fairly comprehensive point to Helen. Well done.
I think I need to recalibrate my answers a bit here.
I'm still hoping for the first evidence of reindeer.
Yes.
That would be great. That would be great. Right, well done. So we have some proper points on the board here as we move on to question number 4. So this brings us to halfway through our Christmas quiz here on the Time Team podcast. And the question comes from, again, somebody we featured on this podcast relatively recently, Giselle Kirai.
Hi, my question is, which airborne regiment are the Band of Brothers from?
Ah, yes. This is one that you either know or you don't, isn't it? We've done many YouTube videos about the Band of Brothers, those dog tags that they found most recently all scrunched up, and the story that tells. Fascinating thing. If you haven't, by the way, watched any of that, go back on YouTube. It's all there for you, the excavations at the Band of Brothers site. But which airborne regiment are the Band of Brothers from? Any ideas, Derek?
I've got 2 numbers in my head, and I can't remember why I've got 2. I've got 506 and 101, but which one is for regiment? I think it's 506th Regiment.
I am taking that as your answer. Helen?
Oh, well, I'm very similar to Derek. I have this feeling that it's 3 numbers, and I just tried to loosen up my mind and let something waft into it. And I had a feeling that it's got 5s and 3s and something repeats. So in the end, I wrote down 353, crossed it out and wrote 355.
355 says Helen. 506 says Derek. Giselle, answer please.
And the answer is the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 101st Airborne Division. Happy holidays!
Oh, very good. Derek, that is great. So not only did you correctly have the 2 3-digit numbers in your head, you identified the right one that we needed, which was 506. So yeah, it's the 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 101st Airborne Division. But the regiment, which was the question, was 506, which means, Derek, that is a point. to you.
That was 50-50, to be honest.
That is amazing, Derek. I don't know how you picked those numbers just out of your head. That is phenomenal.
It was one of the highlights of the last few years, that dig. I got to spend some lovely time up there and stay in one of the stables, which the 506th Regiment stayed in. So it's glued in my mind.
All right, question number 5 now. And this is a really good question. And it comes from our digger driver.
Hi, this is John Beaver. My question to you is, what type of bucket would I use on an archaeological dig? Would it be A, a digging bucket, or B, a grading bucket?
Get your answer down, and I think it's Helen to go first. Go on, Helen.
Right, well, my logic with this is that I think a grading bucket is the one that doesn't have teeth, and the digging bucket has teeth. So because a grading bucket, grading is scraping, I think. So I am going to go for a grading bucket.
You're saying B, the grading buckets. Derek, are you agreeing with Helen, or are you going with the other one?
Going for grading.
2 gradings. This could be a point each. Let's find out if you're right.
The answer is B, grading bucket.
Phew.
I would just like to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and all the best for 2025.
Oh, lovely.
Thank you, John. Well done. Yes, indeed, a grading bucket. I think I probably would have been able to get the answer to that as well, because John showed me, when I got to have a little drive of that digger, he showed me that there are a digging bucket is what you would expect to see on like a building site, because it's quite sort of rough round the edges, you know, it really kind of carves up the ground. But the grading bucket means that you can just take that top layer off really, really gently. If you used a digging bucket to try and do that, you'd just mess up the ground and lose all the archaeology. So I think I maybe would have been able to get a grading bucket. All right, scores on the doors now are looking pretty good as we go into question number 6. Derek has 2 points, and Helen, I would say, is just in the lead with 2 sort of and a bit that we allowed her to add on there. All right.
Neck and neck.
Yeah, just a little bit. Here we go then. Question number 6 comes from your mate, Derek.
Uh-oh.
It's Lawrence.
Hello, you lovely lot. It's Lawrence Shaw here, and I've got a festive question for you. So, archaeologists in the UK discovered evidence in the Roman city of Chester of a winter festival celebrated on December the 17th. And this is believed to be the influence to Christmas traditions. But what is the name of that festival?
What was the winter festival celebrated on the 17th of December? Derek.
Oh, I am going to make a wild guess here. You introduced him as my mate, but he gave me no heads up here. He gave me no heads up at all, which is infuriating. I'm going to take a wild stab and go Saturnalia.
What is Saturnalia? Why, sort of, who would have celebrated it?
Good question. It's got something to do with the word Saturn, and it sounds a bit Roman.
Helen?
Well, I've been racking my brains for what the pre-Roman festival of the winter solstice was, because I know we've got Beltane, which I think is in... No, hang on, that's not my final answer. We've got Beltane, which I think is Halloween, and we've got Lugnasa and various ones in the spring. And so I haven't been able to think of that one. And then I thought, well, Yule, but that is Anglo-Saxon. So thinking of Chester, I have gone down the same route as Derek, and I thought Chester, Roman festival of the winter solstice, that is Saturnalia. So I wrote that one down as well, but conscious that I wish I could remember what the wretched native British one was. They must have, everybody has something for the winter solstice, and I just can't remember what it is. Brain fade.
Well, you've both gone down the same route, so, you know, this is either going to go very well for both of you, or it's going to be pointless. Let's find out. Go on, Lawrence, what's the answer?
And the answer is Saturnalia. This is the ancient Roman festival honouring Saturn, the god of agriculture, and was marked by festivities that resemble some Christmas customs. I hope you all have a fantastic festive break, whatever it is that you're celebrating, and I look forward to catching up with you all in 2025.
Oh, thank you, Lawrence. Saturnalia, then, is correct. Well done. Which means that you are now both up a point. Helen on 3.5 and Derek just behind on 3. So it's still all to play for as we go into question 7 of 8. So the penultimate one now. And this comes from our Penny.
Hello, it's Penny. A quick question for your quiz. Can anybody tell me who accompanied the British archaeologist Max Mallowan on an expedition in the 1930s to southern Iraq?
I like this one because I think there's a bit of a story behind it as well, which I quite enjoy. A bit of archaeological folklore. What are you going to say then, Helen, for this? Write your answer down, please. Who accompanied the British archaeologist Max Mallowan on an expedition to southern Iraq in the 1930s?
Well, I would imagine he had a whole archaeological crew, but I don't know any of their names. The person whose name that I do know was his wife. I don't know when he married her, and she's not known as Mrs. Mallowan or Lady Mallowan as she would have become when he got knighted. But in kind of her pen name was Agatha Christie. So I wrote down Agatha Christie, and I'm hoping I'm right.
Derek, what did you write down?
Oh, that's a fantastic answer. I wish I'd written it down. But I kind of rooted into some vague knowledge that I thought I may have about various heads of schools in Baghdad and places. And I wrote Kathleen Kenyon.
Oh, another good one. Yeah.
I know who Agatha Christie is, so who's Kathleen Kenyon?
Kathleen Kenyon was a formative British archaeologist who, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, served as... where was the school? There was a school in the Near East, but I can't remember where she served. But she was also very famous for developing excavation techniques around box grids and kind of literally groundbreaking excavation styles, along with the Wheelers, Mortimer and Tessa Wheeler.
Yes, she was famous for excavating Jericho, wasn't she? It was the oldest town ever. I think still is the oldest town ever.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, a pretty remarkable woman.
Oh, wow.
One of what people call one of the trowel blazers of feminist archaeology.
Great. I wish I'd thought of trowel blazers. That's fantastic. Well, she does sound like a remarkable woman. Is, though, she the woman that Penny is thinking of, or is it Agatha Christie? Penny, the answer?
And the answer was his wife, Agatha Christie. Hope that helps.
It does. Well, it helps Helen. It helps Helen quite a lot.
I have to admit, I have a book written by Agatha Christie called Come Tell Me How You Live, which is a story of what it's like to excavate sites with, to be a kind of camp follower in a sense. She ran the dig house, she did some of the finds work, and she just watched and she made notes. And it's a fascinating book of a kind of vanished moment of Western archaeology in Iraq.
So we're in a situation now where we're on to the last question, and if we are allowing Helen's half a point, then Derek, you could draw if you get the next one right and Helen doesn't. If we are allowing the half a point, then Helen's already won. Let's just play it and see how we go, shall we?
I think we're playing for pride here, Martyn.
I think so. Right, final question then, and it comes from, well, the main grunt on any archaeological expedition with Time Team.
Hello, it's Ivan the Shovel here. My question is, and it's a two-part question, I was lucky enough to be involved in the last Time Team to be filmed of the original series and the first of the new Time Teams to be filmed. What were their locations?
I'm going to make this interesting. I'm going to give you a point for each place. So that means, Derek, you could still be in the running here, just for fun.
I'm definitely not, Martyn, because I'm pretty sure. Helen, have you been on both of those as well?
Well, to give you a clue, I visited one and I was on the other.
Okay.
I did not. So I can only name one, unfortunately, but I'm going to have a guess.
Well, because you're maybe not quite sure and Helen seems a bit more sure, Derek, you go first with this final question.
The one coming back, I'm going to say, was Boden or Bowden, depending how you pronounce it in Cornwall. And the final one of the original series, I'm guessing we're not talking about specials or anything like that. I'm going to say Brancaster, because it's just a name that popped into my head.
Brancaster and Bowden and Helen, what are you saying?
Well, yes, Boden was the first one of the new regime, which will always be very, very fondly remembered. And the last one, I believe that Derek is correct, because it's a National Trust site, and although I wasn't working on it, it's not very far, it's only a couple of hours from my house, and my husband, Angus, who's the National Trust regional archaeologist, is working there. So I popped up to see him with the children, and there are a few pictures of small children running about, which have cemented it in my memory. So I'm pretty certain that it was Brancaster as well. So Brancaster, the last one of the old group, and Boden, the first one of the new lot.
Well, let's head back to Ivan, our volunteer digger, for the answer.
And the answer is Brancaster in Norfolk and Bowden in Cornwall. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you all.
Oh, very good. So that's 2 points I'm giving you, Derek, and that's 2 points I'm giving you, Helen, which means that, Helen, you win. Oh. Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much.
Let's give Helen a bit more of a round of applause. I think she deserves
well
it.
Played,
very good.
Well played.
Well done. Very good. Congratulations, Helen. That was good fun, that was. There were some brilliant questions in there.
There were, and it was so lovely to have what seems to have been a little Christmas card from everybody. It was so nice to hear everybody's Christmas greetings.
It felt very much like a nice virtual get-together. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was really, really good. Well,
we must do it again sometime.
Well, yeah, maybe we will. Next year. Same time next year. We'll be back. The Time Team podcast, of course, is going to be returning on the 7th of January, our first one for 2025. And we're going to be back with something that we'd been planning to do for a while now, actually. It's going to be a questions-only episode. So if you're a Patreon supporter and you've sent in a question for Helen, but you haven't had it answered yet, there is a good chance that we're going to get to it during our next episode. And Derek, I was wondering, are you all right to come back and join in with answering some of these questions as well?
Oh, I'd absolutely love to. One of the best bits about the Time Team Digs is being able to answer Patreon questions. So I'd love to do it on the podcast as well.
Great. All right, well, let's make it a date. 7th of January, non-stop questions from Patreon supporters to get 2025 off to a great start.
Do join us for that on the next Time Team podcast. But goodbye for now.
Say bye, Derek.
Bye-bye.